What's up, friends? Today we're painting these delicate, colorful, what I like to call joyful butterflies. If you want to paint right along with me today, you'll just need some watercolor paper, some bright watercolor paints in whatever colors make you happy, a round brush, water, and some paper towel. I'm choosing blue and green for my first butterfly and pink and purple for the second one. For this painting, I encourage you not to fixate on getting the perfect shapes, the perfect colors, or perfect anything. The goal of this little project is just to boost your mood, play with bright colors, and have fun using lots of water. These are all things I don't allow myself to do enough of. So maybe like me, you're a recovering perfectionist. This will be the perfect project. Do you feel like everything you do needs to be spectacular or totally perfect? And if you fall short of your own super high expectations, do you beat yourself up about it? Do you sometimes feel like you're only worthy of love and belonging if you're achieving and performing? These are all things I struggle with all the time. Something that's helped me with those inner voices telling me I'm not good enough is therapy. Over the years, therapy has given me the tools to learn to rewrite that inner narrative, to be kinder and gentler to myself. So before we jump in and start painting these whimsical little butterflies, let me tell you about the sponsor of today's video, BetterHelp. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who's trained to listen and give you helpful and unbiased advice. That kinder, friendlier voice in my head that's slowly chasing away the mean, self-deprecating voice, that's the voice of my therapist. You can use my link, betterhelp.com/artbyemily, where you can just answer a few questions and BetterHelp will match you to a professional who has years of experience helping people with struggles just like yours. You can do it all from your phone or your computer via call, video chat, or messaging, however you feel the most comfortable. Finding someone safe to talk to about your struggles has never been more convenient and affordable thanks to BetterHelp. Let them connect you to a therapist today. You can use my link or just select my channel name, Emily Olson Art, during sign up and enjoy a discount on your first month. Okay, so do you have your paints ready to go? Let's get into it.
This might come as a surprise to you, but we're actually going to start with just clear water. I'm using a silver black velvet size 10 round brush and just painting on some pure water in the shape of a butterfly wing. It's okay if it's a little bit puddly this time. The important thing is to be able to see where your water's edge stops, because that's where the paint is going to stop. So just create a leaf shape or a butterfly wing shape. This will be the top wing on the left side of the butterfly. It's helpful too if your water is slightly tinted, and that's totally okay. That way you can see it a little bit better, and you're planning on dropping color in anyway, so it doesn't have to be perfectly clean water. You'll notice I'm just adding little droplets of water in to make sure that it's puddling a little bit. I really do want it to be quite wet. Across from the first wing, I'm painting another one. This one is angling upwards slightly. Aiming for symmetry can be really tricky, so if it scares you to just go directly in with water like this, feel free to sketch the wings ahead of time. So these are the two top wings of my first butterfly, which is blue. I'm going to be using this phthalo blue for my first dollop of paint. I'm using a Sennelier set of 48 colors, which is totally excessive. You definitely don't need 48 colors to do a painting, but I love that it has quite a variety of colors in this set. Phthalo blue is one of my favorites. It's just a beautiful, bright blue, perfect for your boldest, brightest, bluest color on any painting. I use this one for skies all the time. And the amount of paint on my brush is really quite creamy, and I'm just dabbing it in on the top of the wingtips. And if you do have too much water, you can just gently soak it up with a thirsty, clean brush, and that will help control it so that it doesn't just kind of puddle or sit in one little pool. Now this is more of a bright green. I'm just dabbing it at the edge of the blue. Again, it's all just wet next to wet. My paper surface is wet. My brush is not soaking wet. I am controlling how much water's in my brush. Since there's already so much water on the paper, it would be redundant to add more with my brush as well. So I try to control how much water's in my brush. And again, if there's too much pooling, you're going to see some of the paint just kind of sinking into that pool of water, and it's not really going to spread the way you want it to. So you can gently soak it up with your brush. Your brush is your ultimate tool for pushing and pulling that paint around and just controlling what happens. I'm leaving some white in between those bands of green, and then I'm going to go ahead and start the bottom butterfly wings, working the same way. I'm leaving a tiny gap between the top wing and the bottom wing. That will prevent any bleeds, but of course if you want some bleeds to happen, you can go ahead and just touch your brush to that wet paint and watch it flow right into the lower butterfly wings. It's totally up to you. It really depends on what you want and what kind of look you're going for. But just have fun. And I find that the more water and paint I use, the more fun it is, the more unpredictable. And it's a really great exercise in just kind of letting go of control. You can definitely control the paint to some extent, as you'll see me doing with, controlling how much water's in my brush. But ultimately, I don't always know exactly what's going to happen or how it's going to turn out. And I think that's part of the fun. So I added some little swallowtail tips to these bottom wings, and I'm using that same brilliant green, kind of connecting the body to the bottom wings. Watch it float and spread. Isn't that fun? Oh, it's so pretty. So it's a good idea to be consistent with your color scheme. Don't use too many colors all on the same butterfly. I think you'll find that a rainbow butterfly can work, but I prefer just using one or two complementary colors. Again, it's totally up to you. Here at the bottom of those wings where you see those swallowtails, I'm adding some of that phthalo blue and tilting the board. This will help encourage the paint to flow upwards towards the center of the butterfly. Remember that you have that ability, if you're working with a block like this, to just kind of pick it up and move it around and watch the paint just spread. And if it's, again, puddling too much, just use your brush to soak up that excess water. All right, I'm going to let that dry for a minute, and I'm going to start my second butterfly the same way with a clean brush loaded up with water, starting with the top left wing. I'm making this one slightly pointier. You can definitely mix up the shapes of those butterfly wings just to add some interest. And there are a couple of little dips or ruffles in the shape of the wing also. It's a little bit hard to see because it's like painting with white on white, but you may have to adjust how you're looking at your board, kind of lean over it to see where it's wet. I'm going to go ahead and paint the second top wing same way, just water on the paper. By doing both of these at once, it gives the water a little bit of time to kind of soak into the paper. If you're using 100% cotton paper like I am, you're going to get the best results. But of course, you can do this technique with any watercolor paper. I'm using Stonehenge 300-pound aqua cold press. So it's a heavyweight paper. It can handle lots of layers of water and paint. All right, this one is going to be pink. I'm using a bright magenta and dropping it into the wingtips just like I did on the first butterfly. It's just so much fun watching that paint spread and move and push around on the paper. One of my favorite things about watercolor is the wet and wet technique and just getting to see what happens when you put wet paint on wet paper. It's kind of this exciting explosion. You can see here on the right side, the paint is spreading a lot faster than on the left, and that's okay. Just let it happen. I'm using more of a pinkish purple in the center, and too much puddling so it's not spreading. I might need to soak some of that up. But in the meantime, you can dab in some color, just get it in. I'm going to dry that brush, rinse it out, and then soak up some of that water. You could also do this with a paper towel, but a thirsty brush works great. These silver black velvet brushes are wonderful. They're a mix of squirrel and synthetic bristles, and it's just the perfect amount of thirstiness and paint load. I love these brushes. Using a bright opera in the center of the butterfly. Now there was a little bit of bleeding happening here, backwash here on the top of the wing. So I'm going to just go ahead while it's still wet and add some more paint, and you can actually manipulate the paint a little bit. If you don't like the shape of that backwash, you can go over it with more wet paint and just kind of adjust and push and pull. There's so much you can do while your surface is still wet. I think a lot of times we're told just totally leave it alone, don't touch it. Usually that is the best advice, but when you still have a glossy surface, it's still workable. So feel free to push and pull the paint around in this window of time while it's still wet. I wanted to kind of make the two wings more symmetrical as far as how far the pink is spreading down there. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm just adjusting the spread of the pink so that it goes further down, just like the wing on the right. And I think I got really lucky with my wing symmetry here. Symmetry's so hard. I don't know why I struggle with that, but it's just hard to make two of the exact same opposite wings. But I think it turned out okay. So on the bottom wings, I'm going to use a tinted wash this time, so you get to see what it looks like when you're starting with slightly tinted water instead of just clean water. And this is dioxazine purple, watered down of course. And I'm just going to go ahead and paint in most of the bottom wing, just leaving a little bit of white here towards the top, again for some color variety and just to give it some interest. You could certainly paint it all in solid if you wanted, but I love these varieties of values just to add interest. And then I'm going to go ahead and add a swallowtail feature at the bottom again, just like the one on the left. I think it looks really cool. It's really nice to be able to see my color as I'm laying down these bottom wings. Much easier to go for that symmetry when you can actually see what you're doing. Imagine that. So again, I'm using the light tinted dioxazine purple, adding the swallowtail. And in this case, you can see how the purple touched the top wing and there's a little bit of a bleed happening there. That looks so pretty to me. I really love that. Sometimes those happy accidents happen and just go with it. I think it looks really cool. Then I'm taking some of the phthalo blue that I used on the first butterfly and dropping it in on those wing tips. Since blue is an analogous color next to purple on the color wheel, of course those two colors will mix beautifully on the paper. I let that dry completely, and now it's time to add some fun little details. Of course, this is totally optional. If you love the whimsical look of how your butterflies dried in that first wash, you can leave them, but I think they need some bodies and heads. So I'm taking the same colors I used, blue in this case for the first butterfly, and painting a head, a thorax, and an abdomen so that our butterfly is complete. You can paint the two sides and leave a slight highlight in the center so it looks like a shiny body. And then use a smaller brush. This is a silver black velvet size 4 round brush. And you can use it to paint the antenna, and any circles or spots you want to add to those wings can look really pretty. Instead of just using pure phthalo blue, I mixed in a little bit of green so that it's more of a combo of the two colors that I used on this butterfly. Just adding some buckeye spots to the wings. A couple of smaller ones so it's not too perfect. And you can just use the tiny tip of your brush to paint those little tiny circles on either side of the wing. Totally optional. Make your butterflies how you want them. This is your painting. Have fun, do whatever you want with these butterflies. By the way, I'd love to see your versions of these. So if you decide to try this project, tag me on Instagram. I'm on Instagram at eOlsonArt, and I'd love to see your work. Just adding a light green brush stroke for some separations in the wings. Now for our pink butterfly, I'm going to use the purple to paint the body and the head. Again, leaving little highlights in the center so that it looks a little bit shiny. And there's the abdomen, and then a small line curving back towards the head for the antenna. I'm going to add a little bit of a darker blue to the wingtips here. And use a really light wash if you decide to add these wing veins. You don't want these to be overpoweringly dark or too outlined, so make sure that your paint is really watered down so that it's very delicate. Think about how light those wings are, how delicate, and match your brush strokes to the texture you're trying to create. So this one's a little more complex than the blue butterfly, but I really liked the look of the wing veins. So I'm having fun expanding on that in my second butterfly. There we go. So just a couple more markings and outlining along the top as well. And you can look up photos of butterflies if you're not sure how those wing veins are supposed to look. And then just add some spatter at the end if you want one more fun, whimsical extra touch of watercolor paint. I'm of course still sticking with the colors that I used for the butterflies. It's really important to stick with color harmony, especially when you're working on a simple subject like this with just 2 subjects in the image. And there we go. There's the finished butterflies.
Thanks for painting butterflies with me today. I hope you enjoyed this one. I'll see you in the next video.